Hi guys, it's Adrian here. Today's podcast day, and I don't really have a plan for today, so I'm a little bit worried about how things are going to turn out, but let's jump into it. So I guess what I wanted to do in this podcast, I really wanted to get the Aran Islands thing done and uploaded, but now I want to show you just what a hot mess I really am when it comes to organising my knitting stuff and the projects that I've got on the go. I'm a serial UFOer, and for those who don't know, a UFO is an unfinished object. And I feel like I need to create the NGFO, which is never going to be finished object, because that's basically what I've got plenty of. So I've got all of my crap here today that I'm going to show you. I've got some finished objects from ages ago that I'll show you, but I just wanted to give you a look at what's in my boxes and baskets, because that's what I organise. I'm going to use that term really loosely. That's what I organise all my stuff in, boxes and baskets and bags, and it is a real hot mess, but this is going to sort of force me to organise it a little bit better. Fingers crossed. Okay, so let's get started with some FOs, finished objects. This one I am really proud of. I love the cable pattern. It was pretty much my first cable pattern ever. I'm going to block my face for this. You probably won't be able to see it because the yarn is pretty crappy. Now I feel like I can't tell you what yarn it is, but it felted and it's a superwash. And this has actually been used one time, I think, when we were overseas. But the rest of the time it's been rolled up in a drawer or it's been in a suitcase. It's covered in dog hair. But yeah, it really hasn't stood up to minimal use. So I'll never use that yarn again. I guess I'm not going to tell you because I don't want to be slanderous. But the cable pattern was really fun. This took me months and months and months to do, mainly because I was being really lazy with it. But yeah, I do love this one. Some people are sock knitters. Some people make jumpers. Some people make blankets. Apparently I make beanies, and I make lots of them. This is like probably half of the number of beanies that I've made because I like to gift them out. And I'm going to start from the sort of, not really the beginning, but closer to the beginning. And I've got this horrible thing here, and this is made from, it's Heartland by Lion Brand yarn. And it's completely synthetic, but it's really good. It feels like real wool. But the one thing that was sticking out to me just a moment ago was that. I don't necessarily think that weaving in ends was my strong suit. This is also, I'm covering my face up a lot. This is also from Heartland, Lion Brand. I like it. I think it's good. Same again. I got a few different colorways in that. And these, this pattern is a Cleckheaton cable beanie. And Cleckheaton is an Australian brand of wool. But I knit this up in Knit Picks, Wool of the Andes in worsted. I love this yarn. It's not the softest thing to be wearing directly against your skin. But the colours are amazing, especially the heather colours. And I know you won't be able to see this properly, but the lava heather, it sort of looks like a maroon colour, but in it, it has flecks of like bright yellow or electric green, bright blue, red. It's amazing, especially in the sunlight. All these little pops of colour come through. And it's kind of the same story with this one, which I think is garnet heather, but it's probably wrong. And it's black with bright red and then sort of like a more cranberry colour. They're amazing yarns. They're really cheap. But I made this one, one in cream, one in sort of a mustardy orange colour, and then one in a green, which you saw on the Aran Islands video. And by the time I finished knitting all of those, I never want to see this pattern ever again. Oh, this was another of the Heartland ones. I think this is actually the first time that I was really happy with the crown shaping and the decreases. It was the first one that was really neat. I always seem to stuff up the shaping of the crown because I'm never paying attention. And this one I love. This is my most recent beanie, and I love it because it's knit in nice and knit worsted in the harpoon colorway that I made a baby blanket with previously, which you can see on my Ravelry page. And you can find, I'll put a card and description you can link to my Ravelry page and have a look at the stuff that I'm choosing to show you as my finished objects on Ravelry. But this is the FACETS hat, and I don't remember the designer's name, but it's a beautiful pattern. It's a lot more subtle in this yarn, some other yarns that people have knit this pattern up in. And I actually saw this pattern on Jacqueline Salem's podcast, which is Brooklyn Knit Folk, and I'll link you to that as well because it's a great podcast. So that's it for the beanies. Actually, that's it for the finished objects that I'm going to show you today. The rest is all just shame. Okay, I'm going to start with this basket here. This should look familiar. I showed you this last week, my Addy Click interchangeable needle tips. I love them. I use them for pretty much everything. This is the first, I guess, novelty yarn that I've ever knit with. It's t-shirt yarn. So if you've never seen or heard of that, it's also called spaghetti yarn, something else, I'm not sure. They basically just rip strips of cotton t-shirts and it's all stockinette stitch, so it curls on itself and it creates this strand of yarn. It's quite elastic, but I'm using enormous needles. I don't remember the size of these. I think they're 15mm needles. And the skein was pretty big and it was super cheap, but I only bought 1 or 2 of these, I can't remember how many, and thought that's not enough to make a throw blanket, I'll go and get some more, and they didn't have it anymore, so I don't know what's the point of trying to finish that one. I might try and find it somewhere else online, but of course it's going to be different coloured and it's, you know. The next thing I've got here is plenty of knit picks, wool of the Andes worsted. As I said, it's super cheap. There's actually, what is this? Yeah, okay, so this is the invoice. Firecracker heather. That's this really bright red one here. And this one costs $3.50 Australian. $3.50 for this. It's 100% Peruvian wool. I mean, I can't get wool that cheap in Australia. Same price for the darker one, which is this is garnet heather. So it's sort of a richer one. That's the one I was showing you before that has flecks of black through it. They're really good. I'm knitting a fisherman's rib scarf with this, and I will finish this. It is still an unfinished object, not a never going to be finished object. I'll try and find it. I need to dig through all of this. So I've got this on some waste yarn because I think I needed the needles for something. Even though I've got this interchangeable set that has, I've not even worked out how many different combinations of needle tips and cord lengths to give unique needle sizes. But I always seem to need the 4mm needle tips, always. So I need to get another set of interchangeables. But yeah, fisherman's rib, which I don't know if you can see that well. Fisherman's rib is really nice. It looks sort of like a brioche. It's really spongy because it's sort of like a double thickness. It really thickens out the fabric that you're knitting with, or the yarn that you're knitting with. And all you really need to do after a couple of setup rows is to knit into the stitch below the one that's on the needle. It's really as easy as that, and you purl as normal. And it's kind of like the cheats way of getting a brioche look without all of the drama of brioche, which I've never attempted, but I will one day. Where is this? Oh, God. Oh, I shouldn't just pull. What is this? Heartland. What? Oh. These are, at my work, there is a charity organisation that hold meetings in our meeting room, and what they're doing is yarn bombing a bike and making a chicken wire frame child and just covering it in knitted fabric. And I somehow got wrangled into doing some panels, and so I just thought I'll use up some of my crappy scrap yarn to do that with. I've got books everywhere because I pretend like I'm planning and organised and stuff like that. I mean, you know, who am I kidding? I'm not going to keep that up. But this book is really good, and actually my sister gave it to me for Christmas when I was in Ireland, and it's a travel book. And I think she's really upset that I don't use it for travel stuff. But it's got these great pouches in it at the front, and I can actually keep ball bands from yarns with the patterns that I'm using the yarns for. So I thought that was really cool because then I know what yardage and needle sizes and all that sort of stuff that it recommends. Yeah. I've also got a bunch of calico bags, and they're supposed to be project bags. So if I'm working on a blanket, I'll keep the yarn, the needles, the project, all the notions required for it, the notes, in a calico bag. And I think it hasn't really worked out that way. But for this one, it has. In this one, I was using fisherman's wool, and I was really excited to get fisherman's wool, and it actually was really expensive to get it here to Australia, despite the fact that it is a pretty affordable yarn in the US. But it's just not, it wasn't what I expected. I thought it was going to be this really strong, rustic, wiry, scratchy, wool that had loads of lanolin on it that I could feel on my hands, and this is what I had read in reviews. But I had read reviews that when production turned from the US to China, some of these properties were lost, and people were saying that if you got the old label, that meant it was from the US, and the new sort of craft paper, the really trendy sort of new label was from China. But I'm still really not happy with the quality of this. However, this is what I wanted to knit an Aran sweater out of, and I'm not going to. But it's good for a scarf, and this is my own pattern that I came up with, and it was taken from that other scarf that I showed you earlier in the video, these sort of twisted motifs here. And I kind of really like this. This is for, well, I probably shouldn't say who this is for because they're going to be watching. You probably already know who you are now, and that's fine. But I love that yarn. I love the ball that it comes in, which is this sort of like a big, huge tube. Good value for money. There's nothing else in there. Okay, let's get that out of the way. This bag of yarn, I should just, I don't know, donate this or something. This was one of the first purchases I made. It was supposed to, again, be for a jumper. It's awful. It's interesting. It's 3 different shades of brown twisted together, but it's such a hairy kind of yucky wool, and it's just such a flat brown colour. And I don't know why, I know why I bought this, because it was so cheap. It was being discontinued for obvious reasons. And I've actually got a knitted panel. Where is it? Where are you? Oh, is it not here? Oh, it's in the other basket. When I get to it, I'll show you. I did knit one panel of the jumper, and it's mostly stockinette stitch, and it has a rolled edge. It was so boring back then that I just thought, no, I don't want to waste all of my time doing this, so I will pick it up later, and I never have. Story of my life. Basically, what's left at the bottom of this basket thing is just leftovers or stuff that I'm never going to use again because I hate the quality of it. Oh, that's white. Wool. That's wool. This cotton that I don't know, what am I doing with all of this stuff? Oh, these were some swatches that I did for the jumper that the Aran sweater that I was going to make out of fisherman's wool yarn. And it's very important to do swatching. I will do a video on swatching, and I know so many of you hate swatching. I actually did it in 2 different sizes, washed it the way that I would wash the finished object, blocked it out, and then decided which of the fabrics I liked, because I thought I was going to like this tight one more. Aran sweaters are knit really tight to be waterproof, but I ended up really preferring this one, so that's why it's important to swatch. Oh, that's where it is. If I was organised, I'd know where stuff is. I love this. This saves my butt so much, and it's just, it's a gauge ruler, but it also helps to size the needles, because a lot of the times the needle sizes rub off. These are made from bamboo. It actually is there plainly US 3 or 3mm, but when that rubs off, how do you know how big it is? One of those. They're really good. And then I've got that. What was that meant to be? This was going to be a little beanie for a baby, and it was going to have like little owl ears and an owl eye, and it was all just very ambitious of me, especially since I was trying to get it done super quick. I may as well just take this Addy cord out because it's never going to happen. I'll do that. Oh wait. That's what it was going to look like. Very cute. I have no interest in doing that now. And apart from some loose stitch markers and just a few ball bands that I keep in here, there's really nothing. There's no system. Basket number 2. Now this, I mean, I don't know about you, but unfinished objects make me feel kind of bad. Bad that I spent the money on the yarn or the pattern or whatever it is, the time that I put into it, the time that I've taken away from my relationship to knit, and then I just sort of toss it aside and never do anything with it again. But one thing that makes me feel really bad is these. These, I don't know if you can see these well. They're gorgeous buttons. They're made from wood. And I bought them from Tangled Yarns in Brisbane before that store closed down. It was the only sort of, local yarn store that wasn't a big chain crafts shop. And they sold some really good yarn, stuff that you can't generally get in Australia. And I bought these buttons from there for a cardigan for my partner, Reese. I found the pattern entirely too difficult. I couldn't really even get past the cast on. I even messaged the designer on Ravelry and he was gracious enough to send me a free copy of the pattern that I had already paid for anyway, and try and walk through the pattern with me, but I just think I wasn't advanced enough back then and I didn't get it. So these buttons are still waiting for a project. I promise that I will use them one day. So they need to get filed somewhere. I'm going to save this till a bit later. This is stuff that I inherited from my mum. Okay, so here's that brown panel that I was talking about before, and that's the way it goes. That's the back panel. And it's just stockinette stitch in this really dull, flat, boring, gross brown. And I got really bored and just didn't want to continue on with it. So it's still on a bit of scrap yarn, waiting to be picked up. Back then I had no idea how you picked up stitches anyway, because that's what needed to happen at the back of the neck. But I have knitted one complete full sock, so I'm obviously a professional at that now and know how to pick up stitches. So that's cool. So that I'm going to throw that out one day maybe. I think I need to, because I'm not going to continue on, but I just can't do it yet. This is sort of in a similar vein. It's just like an undyed wool, and I was going to knit cushion covers with it. Plain stockinette on one side, and then the other side I was thinking of maybe a cable pattern, but it's just such a fragile, it's like a pencil roving. It's got practically no twist in it, there are no plies, so it would really have not been the best kind of yarn to make that with. And now actually I can see that there are stains. Wow, actually there's like a big stain on that. That is getting binned. Okay, we're doing it. This fisherman's wool, I've talked about this just earlier, but I just find it really weird that they sent it to me in an organza bag. Like the whole thing is branded to look all tough and manly and fisherman-y and, all this sort of stuff. I mean, they don't even dye it colours, they're all just natural sheep colours. And then they send it in this lovely organza bag. That made me laugh. I'll use that again for something one day. I actually still do quite like it, just not for a sweater. What is in here? This is in a rod and gun bag. I must have thought it was fancy at some point. Yeah, this is actually a bag for my partner's shoes. Oh gosh. This is like maybe an exercise in patience. It's just seed stitch. There is an error. My eye goes immediately to the errors. Does yours? Do you do that? I mean, no one else can see, but that's the only thing I can see, the errors, and the whole thing looks so ugly for it. I have to tell myself that there's beauty in the mistakes, but I don't buy it. Oh look, shoelaces. It'll kill me. Now, if you thought the first basket was bad, check out this without dumping everything out. Can you see that? It's just such a miscellaneous collection of yarn. Some of it's good and some of it I'm never using, like this. This is gross, this colour. I mean, this is... It's 100% acrylic. The colour is vile. I'm never using this. Why don't I just throw this stuff out? I don't. I just keep it here. And then you've got this, which is like a beautiful... more Cleckheaton, Australian wool. Really awesome colour. But it's one ball. And it was purchased ages ago. What am I going to make with this? Maybe socks. No, I wouldn't make 2 socks out of this. This is the thing, and I don't like scrap yarn projects. I'm really sorry if you make scrap yarn projects, but I don't like them. This was another fisherman's rib project, enormous, and then I just didn't want to continue on. This is kind of a very scratchy wool. It was really expensive. I think it was like $10 for a 50 gram ball. You know, and I was talking about the Knit Picks Wool of the Andes worsted being $3.50 for a 50 gram ball. I'm not continuing on with this kind of project. So that's, I think, what is left there. Actually, some more swatches. Washed and blocked previously for... What was this for? Oh, I put eyelet there to tell me what size needle, but I didn't know how to do eyelets at the time, so that didn't work either. Oh, there's so much fluff and yuck. Okay. That was for a Fair Isle jumper that I started and never am going to complete. Random needles. Alright. Oh, I do want to talk about this. This doesn't look very good, and actually it's covered in like white little hairs that I could mistake for my own dog's hairs or cats. But this is actually yarn that I got in Galway, and there's no label. It wasn't, you know, there's no information about this because it was just spun locally and dyed locally and grown locally. And there's actually quite a lot of vegetation in the fibre. And these little white hairs, I can't remember the name of them, but they are part of a sheep's coat that shouldn't be included in wool because they don't twist up very well, or spin well, I should say. So I don't know, if I bought it here at home, I'd hate it, but because I bought it in Galway and it was that whole romantic notion of it's all part of the local history and all that sort of stuff, I love it. It actually was really expensive if I care to convert the euros to Australian dollars, which I don't because it's done and I just liked buying the local yarn. I've also got these Aldi bags, and you know what Aldi is, right? It's a German supermarket. I've got a lot of the cooler bags, and those were my very first project bags, and these are where my oldest unfinished objects or never gonna be finished objects live. Oh, look, it's got an Addy. See, this is where all of the cords are on things that I'm never going to finish. This was a mitt glove, and I got it so far as to put the thumb hole on scrap yarn, but then when I tried to do the finger holes, it just didn't work. So, never going to be finished. We'll reclaim that cable, and yeah. If I got rid of half of this crap, I'd have nothing. I'd have to go shopping. Wow, okay, yeah. This is literally the first project that I ever started to knit. And it's the stupidest thing. I mean, it's so big. Look how big this is. It's crammed up on the needle here, on the cable. It's huge. It's actually on a 3 meter long cable, and it actually goes almost the whole 3 meters. But, I mean, I joined in the middle of the row. Who does that? And this grey wool, this is lovely wool, but it costs like $10 a ball as well. So I don't even want to tell you how much money is here right now. Never going to be finished. And in fact, I got so worried about the expense that I switched to this obviously lovely contrasting yellow that is a different fibre type. It's a different weight of yarn. So it in no way goes with the grey stuff. But that was the very first thing I started to knit. Inspired by blankets from Country Road. I got another one of these Aldi freezer bags. What is in this? I don't even know. Okay. Oh gosh, I don't even know what is spilled on this. I'm kind of embarrassed to show this. But this is important. This is Nina's sweater class. And this is actually like a really excellent series on how to knit a sweater, but without using a stitch-by-stitch pattern. So it's basically how to proportion a sweater, and then you just knit it according to the proportions that you make. And I thought that was really cool. It's a little bit more freeform than anything I had done. And so I decided not just to make a plain crew neck jumper, but to make a highly intricate Fair Isle sweater, of course, because why would that not be your first attempt, really? And I've got it here. Oh, yeah, no, look, it can fall off the needle. It's the final Addy cord that I've got here. Oh God, I'm ripping it off the needle. Oh, so this is it. This Fair Isle pattern I've designed, and actually my partner designed part of this as well. So it's really hard. It's hard to want to part with this because it's got our design in it. But I think the colours, it's not right. Like the whole thing is out of balance. And I think if I did do Fair Isle again, I would just use a pattern and I would use the colours as close to what the pattern calls for. Because I bit off more than I can chew, and that's pretty much my modus operandi with knitting anyway. But the main reason I just discontinued this was have a look at the... This is the inside the seam. Like every row, I decided I would cut the yarn and leave the tail, and I thought, I can't keep knitting this jumper because I'm going to end up with 10 million threads, loose ends, and I would never weave that many ends in. These days I spit splice so that I only have to weave in 2 ends for something like a blanket. And if you've never heard of spit splicing before, look it up, it's going to change your life, but only if you use wool. So that's it for the projects that I'm never going to finish, or the unfinished objects that I probably am intending to finish at some point. But what I wanted to show you was this needle pouch that my mum gave me when I started knitting seriously. It's actually some of the needles that she used to use, and also some of the ones that I bought. Oh! Okay, so I promised you guys in a previous video, and I am going to deliver today. These are the initial needles that Reese bought when we were starting to learn how to knit. And they just, I'm a bit of a snob. I love the natural materials. I know I use the Addy Clicks, which is nickel-plated brass, but I love the metal needles. I love the wood needles, so either bamboo or I imagine the rosewood and the ebony. I haven't got any of those yet, but I really want to get some of those. And these, the colours are just ridiculous as well. They're great for little kids, but actually they are great for beginners because there's a lot of texture on the actual needle. And that's going to help your stitches to stay on rather than slip off. I wouldn't recommend using the Addies or something like the metal needles for a beginner knitter because your stuff is just going to come right off the edge of the needle tips. But yeah, these were awful to work with. We didn't use them for very long. Most of the rest of what's in this bag is given to me from my mum, and some of it's really old. Look at these things, these packets of, what is this? Millward brand circular knitting pins, round stricknadon, I'm sorry to the Germans, rund strick, 4mm, 80cm long fixed circular needle, some really big grey metal stitch markers with some newer things in there as well. She did have in there, and I'll try and find some of these tortoiseshell needles. There's just so many. Some of these are almost like powder-coated metal. They're kind of great. There are no more tortoiseshell needles in that bag anymore, but I loved them. They weren't that long. They were probably this long, and they were really flexible. And I'm not sure if they were acrylic or whatever they were, but I think they were very flexible at one point, but they became quite brittle after a long period of time, and they were just really easy to snap and break. It broke my heart, but actually on my Instagram you can see a picture. I took a photo when one of them broke. Made me really sad because I just started to knit with it and I wanted to keep knitting with them, but they broke. But that's fine. And the last thing I've got here is my The Principles of Knitting, June Hemmons Hyde. I think that's how you say her name. This is a really good book. It's kind of like a textbook. I'll just randomly... It's very academic, and I love that because it's where I find a lot of information. The internet's great for I mean, I'm not smart enough really to look at an illustrated instruction for how to do a certain stitch. I just can't get it. I have to watch a YouTube video. But to read like the in-depth stuff, this book is incredible. It's pretty dry, but it's got a lot of good information on it. So that was pretty much my mess, and I'm literally surrounded by this enormous mess now that I'm going to have to put away in the cupboard and one day sort out. But it means I get to go yarn shopping. So yay, small wins. I'm not really working on much at the moment. I do have the second sock from my first pair of socks that I'm going to finish. I mean, I'll show you those some other time, but they're nothing special. They're just a sock. They're made out of worsted wool, so they're like a big house sock, which I think is a great way to start doing that. Anyway, thank you for joining me again for another podcast. Next week there are going to be 2 videos, and one of them will be a quick knit, and that is just going to be an instructional on how to cast on, how to do a slip knot, how to cast on long tail method, how to do the knit stitch, how to do the purl stitch. So that's really aimed at the beginners. And then I'll be uploading the same tutorial but more in-depth information as well. So until then, stay safe, look after yourself, and thanks for joining me. Please like, comment, subscribe for more content like this. Bye.